Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Design Theater, where I take a look at different artists that I love, art that I'm inspired by, and share some of my thoughts and ideas behind what it is that I get inspired from whenever I look at this art. Today, we're looking at the manga art of Vagabond, which is the story of the famous samurai Miyamoto Musashi. This book was done by Takehiko Inu. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing Japanese names. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name. I'm sure I pronounced it wrong. Anyway, we're going to be taking a look at some of his art today. I also put together that little trailer there at the beginning with some music from a guy named Jacob, which I've put a link to his work in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed that introduction. I created that introduction because it felt like the most appropriate thing for how epic the story of Miyamoto Musashi is. If you don't know who he is, he was a famous samurai who lived, I'm not exactly sure, it looks like he died in 1645, so he lived during the 1500s in Japan, and he was considered to be the greatest swordsman that had ever walked the earth in Japan. And he had fought something like 60-something battles and won every single one of them. So I find that the ethos of the samurai and the ethos of the martial artists and the discipline it is that we see in martial arts is something that I think carries over really well into illustration as well. Because very much like martial arts, illustration, and specifically doing comics, it's a solitary activity. It's something it is that you're doing completely by yourself. You're not doing it as a team, and it's really a heroic effort to be able to create something as huge as Vagabond. I mean, he did all of these illustrations, all with a pen, all with a brush pen, and he did hundreds of them. I mean, the amount of detail and the clarity of these images it's pretty startling when you really step back and look at how much work it is that it must have taken him to do all of these different pieces. You know, one of the things I love about his work is that he goes for those classical moments that we all know from like samurai movies, where you have two characters facing off, like here alongside a beach, and then he has this subtle sense of the wind coming into the scene from the waves on the beach and the waves that are passing through this guy's hair, right? We see it subtly there. The detail on the faces that he's able to create, the amount of emotion he's able to get with these expressions and how they help him tell the story. There's so many different skills it is that he had to learn in order to do this, and I think that the philosophy of Miyamoto Musashi, which is called Dokudo, the path of aloneness, is something that is relevant to artists or anybody that's doing anything creative. There's 21 principles to Dokudo. I'm not going to go over all of them, as I think that would create a pretty long video. But suffice to say, in order to create a work of art like this, like the Vagabond books, it really required the artist to take on these principles in a lot of ways, it seems like. You know, he really embodies the discipline of Miyamoto Musashi in his ability to create this amount of highly detailed illustrations and to stick it out even when it must have been incredibly difficult. You know, you take a shot like this, for example. This shot is deceptively simple, you know, because you don't have a background. And that's true, he didn't have to worry about drawing a background, and that was obviously a creative choice of his. But that also means that the emphasis is completely 100% on the two characters that are fighting here. And so those have to be, those drawings and the sense of dynamicism in those drawings has to be right on point, right? So some of the principles here, like such as the first one, accept everything just the way it is. I can see something like that passing through his mind as he's doing these images. You know, there must have been times when he's doing these insanely detailed drawings and they're not hitting the way it is that he wants them to hit. And he has to live with that, even though these are amazing. You know, from our perspective, they're amazing. But often from an artist's perspective, you know, we look at our own drawings and we're disappointed by them. So I'm sure there's parts of this that he wished he could have done differently. And if you watch documentaries on him creating this book, you can see the anguish and the amount of pain and suffering he went through in order to do this. And it reminds me of the second principle, which is do not seek pleasure for its own sake. In order to do an undertaking like this, in order to put yourselves through a fire of discipline to create something like this, it requires you to put the simple pleasures of life aside. There was no doubt times when he didn't want to put these books together, and still he showed up. The third principle being, do not under any circumstances depend on a partial feeling. I'm not clear on what it is that this particular one means, but I'm assuming that that means that you have to step into something wholeheartedly, without hesitation. Just like Miyamoto Musashi had to do the same whenever he's in a battle, such as something like this. Is this just a legend, or is this something that actually happened where he fought off this many men? Of course we don't know, but the story behind it is very inspiring. And I'll leave you with this last thought from the Dokudo philosophy, which you can go and check out on your own. The other one that stands out to me, the other principle, is never stray from the way. This path of being an artist and going down this path of trying to do something that seems impossible to other people, that you could do anything remotely similar to what this guy has done. But you know, we have to realize that there was a time when this book wasn't a real thing. It was just a passing thought in his mind, and he had to make his decision whether he was going to go down this path or whether he was going to pass up the idea. Or maybe he didn't really have a choice. Maybe the idea found him and he had no choice but to go through this whole experience of creating this book. But myself as a comic artist, after only completing 2 books, I have to say that I'm incredibly humbled by the amount of work it is that this man put into his Vagabond series. So actually, I guess the last one of the principles that I'll mention is don't be jealous. That's one of the other principles. Don't be jealous. You know, we can't look at other great, amazing artists and measure ourselves up against them. Otherwise, we don't get anywhere. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the intro in this little video. I'm going to be putting up more of these videos this week. Thanks, guys, for watching, and take care.